With this brief video introduction, we come to the last of the three texts that I've asked you to engage during this course. This one by Wolf and Bass, entitled Practicing Theology, Beliefs and Practices in Christian Life. I want you to know why I've chosen this text and why I think it may be one of the most important, although all three carry significant value, I think, in terms of A Course in Spiritual Formation. I've chosen this one especially as our final text for a variety of reasons, but there is a primary mix of assumptions and perspectives that I think make this a particularly significant resource for us. First of all, it is a theological text appropriate for a seminary. As a discipline, you know, theology arises from the scriptures, at least biblical theology does, and gives us a way to understand the major questions of life. Who is God and who are we? Two of the most fundamental questions we ever encounter. What does it mean to be a human? What does it mean to be a Christian, a follower of Jesus? What does it mean to be a child of God? How do we live? How do we live life with purpose and fulfillment in the world that we live, the world, the place, and the time we live? What's the good life, and how do we attain it? These questions are essential and important in the context of spiritual formation because they are the questions that we live with and in a good way live into. But they're certainly the questions that this course is trying to address on some level. Second, it's a bridge text. These readings bridge, they connect theological, biblical, historical, ecclesiastical, contemporary silos, falling perhaps into a category of practical theology as opposed to theoretical theology or systematic theology. These questions are the ones we struggle with right now, and they are the questions that this text helps us to figure out, at least to understand the questions better, which is sometimes the most important part of figuring life out, right? So it's a bridge text, it's a theological text. It also addresses currently the flux in the state of the Christian church and suggests hopeful perspectives for the future. Many of us, me included, have a sense that the church has a future, an important future, but we're just not sure what that future will be. We also have a sense that the church right now seems to be losing ground. Of course, that perspective can only be reached if we forget that it's God's church, not ours. Still, we wonder, right? If not in general about Christendom, we may worry about a church in particular, a denomination in particular. Fourth, persons in seminary are going or already into ministry, going into or already in ministry of one kind or another, for one purpose or another, and are called upon to serve as bridges between theology and practice, helping persons in your care to live well as formed followers of Jesus Christ. And finally, on a personal note, I think one of the major errors that the church made some decades ago is the loss of formational practices. Call them Christian educational practice, call it discipleship. This loss seems to have left a substantial portion of its membership without a strong foundation on which to stand the challenges of those who would ignore the church, consider it fully irrelevant, or who may in turn use it for their own nefarious ends. Now, we won't read all the text, but the essays that I've chosen live out of those 5 different perspectives that I've just enumerated. I certainly recommend that all of it be read. It's worthy to read, it's helpful, and it's important. I've selected 5 specific readings that are essential texts for the purpose of this course and which spread over the divisions of the text itself. But the introductory essay by Dorothy Bass must be read first, before you read anything else. We often skip introductions. In this case, I think it's really important because Wolf and Bass are editors. They're also authors who have written essays in the text, but they're editors who have put together a selection of essays for a particular purpose. And so it's essential that you understand where they are coming from in the selection of the text that they are putting before us. She says, the very first line of the introductory essay calls us to the question, but what does that have to do with real life? I suggest this is a question that all of us must wrestle with because it's the question that many, too many, struggle with in trying to understand why church and life and the Christian life matter. The book is divided into 4 sections. We'll read from each over the next 3 weeks. Each section emphasizes a particular aspect of practicing theology. All that we have discussed about spiritual formation and spiritual practice, all that you've read, all that you've written and thought about, should be in your minds as you approach the text. Think of each essay as a lens through which to consider a specific essential facet of theological and life practice. The prompts for your responses are in the assignment section. We'll read the introduction and both essays of the first section. Dykstra and Bass's very fine article on a theological understanding of Christian practices, which I think is one of the most valuable essays in the book. Also, Pa's book, Attending to the Gaps Between Beliefs and Practice, which is essentially what formation is all about, right? Bridging what I believe and how I live my life into a congruent whole. We'll read and reflect on 2 essays following each of the 2 following sections. Jones's essay on graced practices, excellence, and freedom in the Christian life. Freedom is a huge issue we're fighting with right now. We live in a world where, even in the context of the coronavirus argument that's going on in our country right now, it's an argument between my personal freedom and our responsibility for those who live in the world with us, right? I think that's true. The other one is also by a Jones, Beliefs, Desires, and the Ends of Theological Education. You are involved in seminary. You are involved in theological education. Have you given thought to what are the ends, or what should the ends be? Have you ever asked your professors? Do you read learning goals and objectives for your classes as they are presented to you in syllabi? We will also read the final essay from section 4. The introduction and Dykstra and Bass's first essay and Wolf's final essay are wonderful bookends for this excellent collection of essays. Wolf's A Theology for a Way of Life, and that is ultimately what we are called to, living as followers of Jesus Christ. That's a way of life. Well, what is that? What does that mean? How do we sing the Lord's song the psalmist asked millennia ago? How do we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? Well, Wolf gives us some really important things to think about in that regard. Well, enough. Good reading. I'm looking forward to reading your thoughtful responses and to engaging those responses with you as we proceed. God's blessings on you.